All right. Thank you so much, Alavia. I hope everyone is excited. For those of you who have stayed on from the product innovation session, that session always gets me excited, looking at different product ideas and coming up with new brands, new things that you can offer to consumers. And for those of you who are just coming back into the audiences, coming back to the stage, our session next are going to cover the US and local regulations. Now, I'm going to ask all of you guys to put your brand innovator hat on the side and then put on your entrepreneur hat, right? When I run businesses, it comes with a lot of things with operations, regulations, compliance, and being an entrepreneur in Singapore, what are the regulations you need to keep in mind? And selling a product in the US market, what are the product regulations and compliances you have to keep in mind? So today, I'm excited to welcome our panelists to join us on the stage from 3 services providers. Can I have our panelists, and can everyone give them a round of applause, please? All right. So, obviously today we're covering both US and the Singapore markets, and there's different consideration for a brand owner to consider from a product standpoint, from a business operation standpoint. We will start with a quick introduction of our panelists here today. So on my right, we have Mr. Boon from XCIP. XCIP is an IP consultancy firm that offers worldwide jurisdictional coverage across Southeast Asia and worldwide. At XCIP, they help business owners to understand the value and the relevancy of IP, intellectual property, in your business, marketing, and brand strategy globally. And Mr. Boon, obviously, he has, with his deep understanding on IP commercialization, he has effectively advised the client on IP rights, improve their business strategies, and increase assets value. So, Mr. Boon, can I have you to quickly introduce yourself, as well as, if there's one message that you would like the audiences to take away from our session today, what would it be?
Hi. I think Aubrey already mentioned a lot about me in short, but the message I would like everyone to take back from this session would be, know your IP, use your IP, and learn how to exploit your IP.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Boon. And then coming up, our second panelist, Mr. Vijey, is from Registrar Corp. They're in the field of FDA compliances. Now, if this is a new concept for you, FDA stands for the Food and Drug Administration in the United States. So their company brings over 20 years of experience and expertise to US FDA regulation compliances, operating in 19 offices worldwide, servicing over 30,000 clients in 175 countries. Today, I have Mr. Vijey Ananda, our Senior Regulatory Advisor, who currently manages a team of experts that assist local exporters of food and beverage, cosmetics, medical devices, and other product categories that might require compliances from the US FDA regulations. Mr. Vijey, a quick introduction and same questions to you. What will be the one message you would like our audiences to take away from today?
Thanks, Aubrey, for the kind introduction. I think the one message that I will get across is that it is critical to embrace the compliance regulations from the beginning when you look to exporting to a big market like the US.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Vijey. And then last but not least, on my far right, we have 2 gentlemen from Sleek. So Sleek is an all-in-one digital platform that helps business owners seamlessly manage your company, incorporation, compliance, bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, taxes, and visa, right? So basically, everything has to do with the business operation. With offices across Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and the UK, Sleek has served more than 400,000 clients over across more than 100 countries with millions of bookkeeping transactions. And today, I'm glad to have both, speakers and experts from Sleek. We have Jarvis Lee, our tax expert who specializes in Singapore corporation tax compliances, GST, tax advisory, investigation, dispute resolution in Singapore, and Mr. Quentin Feller, business incorporation expert who has helped and advised hundreds of entrepreneurs to set up their business in Singapore. So same questions to you guys. What would be the one key message you would like our audience to take away from today?
Thanks, Audrey, for the introduction. So I think the key message will be don't overcomplicate and don't procrastinate when it comes to your legal obligations.
Oh, I love it rhymes.
Yeah, thanks Audrey for the introduction as well. For us, I would say it's about the same thing. Like every company, even if it looks simple, needs to comply with local regulation, and people like Sleek are here to help you to achieve that easily, basically.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So without further ado, let's jump into our panel discussion today. I think obviously we have two countries to cover, and some of the key advices our subject matter expertise have. I would like us to perhaps start with the U.S. market, where all of our entrepreneurs are selling into. Obviously, when it comes to protecting your brand, protecting product, making sure that you're keeping your business safe in the operating countries, there's a lot of considerations. So maybe my first question will be to Mr. Boon. Many of our audiences here might be new to the concept of intellectual property. Would you like to talk quickly about how is the landscape like for IP in the US?
Right. As we know, US is a very robust market, in fact, right? So, robust market in the sense whereby, especially in knowledge-based economy. So, for the past 20 to 30 years, as we know, since the introduction of the internet and the .com world, a lot of tech house and also e-commerce house like Amazon has actually came to the market, right? So, intellectual property has been playing a big part of the economy in US market especially. For example, today, consumer buy because of the brand, because of the trademark. Consumer buy because of the technology. For example, patent. So no one is going to buy something without a brand, without an IP today.
Yeah, I have a simple question. What's the difference between trademark and IP?
Okay, intellectual property is basically the big topic of all, for example, trademarks, copyrights, patents, industrial design, so on and so forth.
I see. Thank you for that. I guess together with our other experts in other area of regulations and compliances, what role do you think IP play in a consideration for, say, a business owner?
All right. So as you can see, as a business person, all right, even as a product owner, right, every single time when you want to sell something, you want to go into the market, there are a few considerations in place. For example, setting up a company, right? Secondly, getting FDA approval. If you're in electronic, you try to get CE approval, so on and so forth. However, business owner nowadays, they tend to forget the most important thing when it comes to their products is actually the trademark itself, the IP itself. That's why you see whenever Amazon enroll their potential sellers, always it's a requirement to look at the status of their trademark. So the thing is, a lot of business owners, whenever they go into business, they always tend to forget trademark. So imagine this. You spend millions and millions of dollars, or even not millions, okay, let's say 10 over 1,000, 20 over 1,000 to do your marketing. So you get goodwill over time, and then people actually know your brand. Imagine this. What if one day someone actually send you a legal letter and tell you, hey, this trademark belongs to me. So what are you going to do next? So that's a question that you have to ask yourself. Do you want to go through that process, or you want to avoid that process?
So more from a brand protection point of view.
Yes.
Understood. Thank you for that. And then up next, I think, obviously operating in the market, you need to protect your brand. at the same time, selling a product in that market might require, certain certification, regulation, compliances requirement. So next up, my question is for Mr. Vijey. For the Singapore sellers who are in food and beverages and cosmetics products, why is it important for them to be fully compliant with US FDA regulations? And maybe for some of our new audiences here today, they may not be fully familiar with FDA regulations. Would you care to talk about that slightly?
Oh, thanks for the question, Aubrey. So just to be sure, this is for exports to the United States. This is for exports relating to food and beverage products and cosmetics, yeah? So to answer the question directly, why is it important to be compliant? There are two main reasons. The first is cost. It is costly not to be compliant, right? So contrary to popular belief, the FDA doesn't approve anything. The FDA has regulations, and it has got a means to track that these regulations are complied with. If you are not compliant with US FDA regulations, your shipments could be stopped at a US port. And this could be very costly for you, A, to retrieve your shipments, B, to rectify the situation. So you really don't want to be faced with such a situation, okay? So obviously you need to have your facilities registered to start off with, and to notify electronically that goods are arriving at a certain port at a certain time. The second reason relates to reputational risk. Should you run into any problems, the US FDA might take certain kinds of actions, like an import alert or a warning, or in a worst case scenario, there could be criminal proceedings. All of these are made transparent. They are published on the US FDA website, and this will affect your reputation, affect your ability to make future sales, and waste your time in rectifying the situation. So for those two reasons, I think it is absolutely critical to get FDA compliance right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Vijay. And we've heard a lot of why is IP important, why is FDA important. I'm sure some of the audiences might have questions on what to do after that. Now that it's important, we'll come back to those questions in just a little bit. Before that, I do want to touch on some of the key considerations, not just in US, but as well as in Singapore for you guys as well as entrepreneurs. So my next question is to Mr. Quentin. For incorporations, so for any new business starters, what does it take to start a business in Singapore, and really how complicated it is?
So I would say set up a business in Singapore is actually really easy. So you need like 5 different elements in mind to set up the business. You need to have at least one shareholder, who can be anyone living in Singapore or not. You need to have an address where the company will be officially registered at. You need to start with a capital of $1, so it's affordable for most of us here, I think, everyone. We need to have also one director who needs to be Singaporean or PR living in Singapore. And lastly, you need to have a corporate secretary in charge of all the compliance. So basically someone like Slick. So if you have those 5 things, then you can register a private limited company. It usually takes like a few days maximum to get the UEN, which is the official tax number of the company, which shows the company has been registered in Singapore.
Thank you so much for that, Quentin. And then obviously with Incorporation, now the business set up, it's up and running, shipping to the US, all compliant. Now we need to talk about when the money comes into play, what does it mean for tax? So luckily I have Jarvis here with us today. So questions to Jarvis. Do all e-commerce businesses need to register for GST? And what are some of the rules and regulations around there? It might be a very new concept to some of our audiences here today.
Thanks for the question. So for GST, e-commerce and any other businesses in Singapore is alike. So if your taxable turnover reaches 1 million or over 1 million, we have to register for GST. For e-commerce in particular, usually they ship products or services out of Singapore. So these are considered zero-rated services. And if your zero-rated services reach 90% of your total taxable turnover, then you can apply for exemption for GST.
Oh, they can apply for exemption for GST.
Yep.
Oh wow, that's really good to know. And I guess the question is that, you know, if you're selling to another country, do you need to pay taxes in Singapore as well as the country you're selling in?
Yeah, so whatever income you earn in Singapore are usually taxable in Singapore. But other than that, usually will incur withholding taxes when you sell to overseas country, depending on the jurisdiction of that country. So some countries only charge withholding tax on services and not goods. So it depends. It really depends on the jurisdiction that your
of the
client
particular
is.
country, yeah. And if I recall this correctly, so our lovely speaker Jason Tay, he has a very detailed article about income tax on his website. So in case anyone is curious on what to do, feel free to check it out as well. I think it's pretty comprehensive and really tailored for Amazon sellers. All right, so I think that's a really great introduction to all of the key experts that all of the guest speakers are in, and you know, keen to dive into a little bit more details, some of the key recommendations that our expert might have for our audiences. So first question is to Mr. Boon again from XCIP. If let's say, you know, the brand has already got their IP registered, they're protected, does it mean that it will be protected? Does it mean that the brand owner doesn't need to do anything anymore? What happens after that?
All right, thanks, Aubrey. So in Singapore, I believe most sellers, right, they may have, you may have your trademark being registered. So in Singapore, it's basically a very straightforward process. After you get your trademark registered, and basically you just have to monitor it and make sure it's being renewed every 10 years. Unlike in US is a different market altogether. So for example, when you file a trademark in US, right, the first thing that you need to know, are you ready to actually enter into the US market? Don't file for the sake of filing it. Reason is because in US, there's three ways basically to file for a trademark. Number one, you have a foreign registration, which is US. Subsequently, you have to show you have intention to use your trademark. And then eventually you have to show that you are actually using the trademark. So the thing is, in US market, if you do not have any intention in going to the market, plan first before you file. Because you are only given 3 years upon filing for your trademark in US. If you do not use it after that and you can't prove that you are actually using your trademark, essentially the USPTO, which is the US Patent and Trademark Office, they will basically remove your trademark. So that's something very, very important to take note.
And after that, is there renewal or do they reapply? How does it work?
So if your trademark is being deregistered, in short, you can basically refile for the trademark. But think about it, you are incurring costs again, you see.
Yeah, I see. I guess, I mean, it's a relatively, because when it comes to jurisdiction, law related, it can be an overwhelming subject to some of our new brand owners. In your opinion, when an entrepreneur interacts with the IP consultancy or IP law firm, what are some of the key interactions, or what are the key services that they could seek help for from an IP firm?
Right. When it comes to dealing with any IP firms who is able to handle international portfolio, for example, outside of Singapore, so on and so forth, the test I usually tell my client, look at the speed of reply. Because it's very simple. If I'm a Singapore-based IP firm, if you ask me a question outside of Singapore, if I do not know anything outside of Singapore, I'm going to take time to reply to you. Right? It's either I Google for the answer or I look for a partner to get the answer, in short. However, if they are able to get back to you very, very fast, you know they know the work. Right? You know they know the work. And the second thing is, you need to ask all the right questions when it comes to IP registration. Why? For example, if you go to a firm whereby they do not know anything about US, they are going to tell you, oh, it's very simple. It's just like Singapore, file and we are done. Right? So imagine 3 years later they ask you, hey, do you have any documents to actually show that you have been using it? you are unable to provide, then you are essentially in trouble, you see.
So I guess the advisory education is really important for the business owners to consider. Thank you so much, Mr. Yeong. So XCIP, they do have a presence at the booth with us at the back in case anyone want to get in touch with them later on. My next question is to Quentin on Incorporation. So obviously, Sleek has helped so many businesses set up their business in Singapore. What are the areas that business usually go wrong with? I think, some key takeaways for our audiences here today.
So I think there are mainly 3 areas people get wrong or like not too sure about when registering a company. First thing, they don't always understand what they have to do after the company is registered in terms of like yearly compliance. So it doesn't matter how small your company is, you still have usually 4 filings per year you need to follow. With Accra, you will have to do your AGM and file your annual return. And with IRS, you will need to file your ECI and your corporate tax return also every financial year. It's not because your company is like a one shareholder, one director kind of company, which just selling on Amazon in a sense that you don't have to follow those obligations. That's the first thing. Second thing, depending on the type of product you sell, you might need a license or not based on the type of product. So before you start selling anything like regulated, like I don't know, there might be different kind of goods which are regulated, then much better to check before what licenses you might need. Also depending on the market where you sell them, that's the second thing. And I think the third thing to have in mind before someone start a business is like, we see people at Sleek who start a company because it's very easy, but then they're not too sure after about the actual execution in terms like, is there any insurance or not, what kind of bank account to open, this kind of thing. And so that's the kind of stuff usually I would advise to think about much earlier in the process, because the incorporation is the easy part, it's more what comes after, which becomes much more challenging.
I see. Thank you for that, Mr. Quentin. Well, next, I think I'm going to work backwards maybe to Mr. Jarvis, and then I love your key message earlier, right? Don't overcomplicate, but also don't procrastinate, which is important for especially taxes, because there's always dates and deadlines. So what are some of the key dates and deadlines for, specifically for Singapore when it comes to tax regulations?
As what Quentin mentioned, for corporate tax, there's ECI, estimated chargeable income, and also final tax return filing. So for ECI, it's within 3 months after the financial year end of the company. And for final tax filing, it will be on the 30th November of the year after the financial year end. So for GST, usually it is a quarterly filing. So it will be within the month after the quarter ends.
The month after the quarter ends.
Yeah, so for quarter 1, it will be January to March usually. So the filing deadline will be on 30th April.
So quarterly filing.
Yes, for GST.
I see. Yeah, okay. Those definitely should put in the calendar, right? And like every month. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And for the Sleek team, if anyone have any questions, feel free to check out their website afterwards. And then back to Mr. Vijey, we've talked about how important FDA regulations are, and specifically for the categories, I know food and beverage, cosmetics, they all have very different set of rules. What would you say are some of the basic compliance considerations for F&B, and same questions maybe for cosmetics as well?
No, thank you, Aubrey. So the basic regulations that need to be complied with before you export any food and beverage are firstly, any facility which manufactures, processes, packs or stores any food or beverage meant for consumption by humans or animals in the US needs to be registered. So the first is facility registration. Secondly, before the products are shipped to the US, there needs to be an electronic notification or a prior notice that needs to be sent to notify the FDA that a shipment is arriving. And finally, there's a need to have a US agent, which is someone based in the US who is able to be contacted by the US FDA 24/7 to respond to any questions relating to US FDA compliance. So these three are the most basic requirements. Of course, there might be others depending on the products you're talking with. If you're keen to discuss, I'm happy to talk to you. When it comes to cosmetics, there's some similarities. And cosmetics regulations are quite interesting because the rules are changing. Up to now, cosmetic regulations are voluntary, but from December they're going to be compulsory. So having a registration is important, again, for any facility which manufactures, packs, or stores such products for use in the United States. Finally, there needs to be listing. So any product that is sent to the US has to be listed. And finally, every label needs to have an advanced event notification procedure. So there needs to be a named contact on the label in case anything goes wrong. So these are the basic requirements for both food and beverage and cosmetics.
I see. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Vijay. I guess there is a lot of considerations from the manufacturer to your packaging, to your labeling, to submitting before shipping. So with that, I wish that I have with the rest of the day to continue diving into this complex topic. Obviously, regulations and rule, like local laws and compliances are never easy topic. But do approach our professionals and subject matter expertise if you have need in a particular area. Obviously, you want to make sure your brand is protected, you're operating safely in the market that you're selling to. So with that, thank you so much for our panelists today.